Yesterday was Star Wars Day, so I wanted to dive into some new Star Wars games for this year. Well, sort of. The Force Unleashed was a fun series of physics-heavy action games. The Switch got a pretty good port of The Force Unleashed 1 years back, but it was based on the more simplistic version of the game from the PS2, Wii, and PSP. There was another far more advanced version tech-wise. That's what we're diving into today. Here is how I've gotten the original Steam Deck to run Star Wars The Force Unleashed and its sequel, The Force Unleashed 2. To start things off, both of these games are listed as unsupported on the Steam Deck, and that is simply not true. They can both launch and run fine on Valve's handheld and have great gamepad support. Granted, there are a couple stipulations here. The first game has a launcher and you'll need to use the touchscreen or a mouse and keyboard to adjust settings before launching the game proper. And The Force Unleashed 2 cannot modify options in the menu with the gamepad. You can go to things like graphics options with the physical buttons, but you need to actually do a tap or click to actually change those settings. You'll also want to do just a bit of modding before you dive in. These games are locked to 30 FPS by default, so we want to change that. Thankfully, there are some great mods out there that can unlock the game to run at 60 FPS by simply replacing the exe file for the games in desktop mode with new versions of those files. That's all you really have to do. Copy and paste a file and you're done. Now, some of the cutscenes will still go down to 30 FPS, but as soon as you boot up and get into gameplay, it'll be right up at a silky smooth 60 FPS. Next, how the games play. If you set the resolution up around 1280 by 800, both of these games will run at full screen on the Steam Deck. Now, it is worth noting that the first game, for some reason, always crops itself when you're connected to a TV, but in handheld mode, it does not have this problem. The Force Unleashed 2 also doesn't have this problem, TV or handheld. Now with graphical settings, go crazy and you'll have a good time. The Force Unleashed 1 doesn't really have any settings outside of resolution, and it'll basically play flawlessly at 60 frames per second. There will be the occasional stutters here and there where it'll drop down to 58 to 59 normally when fighting a large group of enemies, but it'll always jump right back up. The Force Unleashed 2 is similar, but a little bit more on the stutter side. You can put 2 all the way up on high settings if you want, as it's pretty much the same between settings that you choose. What happens is you get 60 FPS during gameplay, but lightsaber combat has this weird slight slowdown effect when you're in the middle of a combo. When this happens, you get fairly consistent drops down to 59 FPS. This is the same on medium and high settings, so it doesn't really matter what settings you choose. And while this is a bit similar to what happens in The Force Unleashed 1 minus the weird slowdown effect, it happens a lot more often than it does in that first game. And that's really all I can say about performance. I know that isn't very much, but that's really all there is. The only weird thing I've had happen outside of the stuttering is some physical weirdness from time to time, like Starkiller getting stuck on a wall mid-jump and having to redo the jump a couple seconds later. Everything else is fine performance-wise. It really does play great in both games. That brings us to battery life. There's not a lot of difference here, with both games getting roughly the same amount. You're going to get about 3 hours out of the original Steam Deck. While the second game does take a slightly higher amount of power to run, you're going to see maybe 5 minutes of difference at the most. That's all for the different sections, so as we wrap this up, would I recommend these games to Steam Deck users? Absolutely. Despite being labeled as unsupported, they play great gamepad-wise, and with just a slight amount of modding, you can get them to run at an almost flawless 60 frames per second. While opinions on the second game are all over the place, from it being fun with its gameplay to its not very good story, these are still 2 fun action games that Star Wars fans should play through. And that's all I've got for you today. I'll be back soon with more Steam Deck performance videos and Nintendo Switch reviews. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.